So one of the products that Stanley's renowned for, tape measures, short tapes in particular. Now, I've got a selection of tape measures in front of me. I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of an overview in terms of what's the difference between the tape. So, all short tapes in general, you have two different types. In the UK, we're probably the only region in the world that uses a combination tape where we have metric and imperial. So one side of the blade is dedicated to imperial, one side of the tape dedicated to metric measurements. Becoming more popular is a metric only tape. Obviously in the UK we have a lot of continental workers who use the metric system, so metric tapes. For me personally, I was taught the metric system, so I prefer to use metric only tapes. I don't use inches, but it's quite common for tradesmen to use a combination of both. Tapes in general, you'll always find a 3 metre tape, a 5 metre tape, an 8 metre tape, and there are also 10 metre tapes. Obviously the difference is the length of the tape and the distance that you're measuring up from. If you're only measuring short distances every day, if you're only measuring 10mm for example, there's no reason for you to go out and buy an 8 metre tape when a 3 metre tape will do the job. The most popular size for us is a 5 metre because it sits in between. It's not too bulky. 8 metre tapes are generally quite heavy. 3 metre tapes are a lot lighter, but will only extend to 3 metres. So 5 metre is kind of a middle of the road, most popular size. So, in terms of tape measures, why would you buy a more expensive tape versus a cheap and cheerful tape? Firstly, it's all about the accuracy. All Stanley short tapes are what we call Class 2 accurate. If you have a look on the blade there, on a good tape, on one that's been recognised by the EC as being accurate to the European standard, has this little number 2 symbol, it's like 2 eyes in a little semicircle. This is a symbol of accuracy. It's a Class 2 stamp, which basically means that this tape has been certified to be accurate to those standards. So in terms of tape measures, Tylon is probably our best opening price point and best loved, most popular tape measure. It's a good all-rounder. You don't pay too much money for it. It's got a nice bimaterial tape case, so it's quite robust, quite rugged. If it gets dropped while you're up on a piece of, on scaffolding, or if it gets dropped while you're up on a ladder, it's going to bounce and it's going to withstand that, and plus it's quite comfortable, sits in the hand quite nicely. The tape itself is steel tape and it's coated with something called Tylon, which is a nylon derivative. And one thing to note with the tape measure, you should always look at the end hook. If the end hook is fixed, if that doesn't move, chances are that tape measure is not accurate. Primarily because when you're measuring up to something, that tape measure moves inwards. When you're measuring away from something, the end hook moves outwards, which means what you're doing is compensating for the thickness of the end hook by moving in and out, which keeps your measurements accurate and consistent. Always good to note as well, the end hook is always under quite a lot of stress and strain because as it slides in and out of the case, it's been impacted. So there's quite a lot of stress on there. Keep an eye on the number of rivets in the end hook. One rivet isn't too good. When you go up to some of the bigger tapes, you have the end hook attached with 3 rivets. So the more rivets, the more secure the attachment. So Tylon is a good all-rounder. And then we move up onto the power lock tape. Everybody knows power lock. It's kind of the archetypal tape measure. If you ask somebody to describe a tape measure, normally they describe power lock. I've got a power lock, my dad used a power lock, it's a very popular tape measure. Power lock again, nice steel blade. It has a mylar blade coating this time, which is slightly thicker than Tylon. Again, it's a similar kind of material, but slightly thicker. And the beauty of having that on the blade is that when you're out on a job site all day, you tend to get dust and grit trapped in the mouth of the tape. And as it's moving in and out, that can start to wear away at the blade. So you tend to lose the markings over a period of time. So that is abrasion resistant. So it basically keeps your numbers in check. So the tape's going to last a lot longer. And you look at the end hook. Again, you've got that true zero. You've got the Class 2 symbol. But if you zoom in on the end there, what you can also see is we have something called blade armour, which right on the end of the tape is a slightly thicker coating which protects the first few inches of the tape which are under the most stress. Normally, when you do measuring, it's those few inches of the tape measure that's under the most stress and strain, so we protect it with an extra layer of blade protection. Then, from power lock, we move up to the big boys. Now this is the Fat Max tape. This is the 8 metre version. So you can see already we've got a very, very wide, 32mm wide tape. We have 3 rivets on the end hook. We've also got top hooks, so if you're measuring underneath the surface, you can actually attach it rather than just using the end hook in a standard format. So we've got, again, mylar blade coating. We've got blade armour up to the first 5 inches of this tape measure. So this blade armour, again, protects against damage and tearing on the tape. And so because you've got a 32mm wide blade and quite a deep concave, it gives you standout. All the men know that the mark of a good tape is the standout. And with this tape, you get about 3.3 metres worth of stand there, and that's the Fat Max tape. Again, you've got a big chunky biomaterial case, withstand any drops, nice tape measure.